Hi, it's Ruben Abramov, and tonight is the first night of the holiday Chanukah. And the meaning of the name Chanukah is the dedication of the temple, the Chanukat Habayit. What is that all about? Well, I'll tell you. Back in the day when the Greeks were the world superpower, they were trying to influence the Jews in the city of Jerusalem and the land of Israel. In what way? They tried to influence them in what was called Hellenism. I made it up that it sounds like Chiloni, Hellenism. And that meant that you were not acting in a spiritual, godly way, but you took on the behavior of the Greeks that focused on physical pleasure, physical form, and the people of the Jewish countrysides, they started to adapt and they started to become more Greek-like. Well, that didn't set well with the family called the Hashmonaim. And the leader was Yehuda Maccabee, the hammer. And what he said is, what's going on over here? You're not behaving like you're Jewish. You're behaving like you're Greek and Hellenists. We have to abolish that. We're going to obliterate that. And they don't teach us this in little elementary school stories, but there was a civil war between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular Jews. That was the first phase. They weren't finished. Yehuda Maccabee then said, it's enough that the Greeks are on our temple mount, the holy land of God. We got to deal with them. And he did not think logically. He did not say to himself, well, there's 40,000 of them and 200 of us. How is it possible? Yeah, logically, impossible. Spiritually, no problem. And that they fought in the name of God to take back their temple mount. And that's how it became Chanukah, because they rededicated the temple on the 25th of Kislev, which is this night, first night of Chanukah. Now, what were they doing? They were not celebrating the miracle of oil originally. The miracle was that the few defeated the many, and that it is not about the power of the individual. It was the last pasuk in the Haftorah, and it said that it is not with your koach, it is with your spirit, and it is the Spirit of God that brought the Jewish people back that Temple Mount. And it said that they carried a lulav, a palm, and they marched around the temple for 8 days. 8 days? What's that? Well, 3 months earlier, they did not have the privilege or the possibility to worship on the tabernacle holiday. So now that they took back the Temple Mount, they said, now we're going to worship for 8 days in replacement and in celebration of having the house of God. After that, hundreds of years later, when the second temple was destroyed, then it became necessary to turn the holiday's attention onto the menorah and the miracle of the oil. So, every holiday has a special chapter of Tehillim that's read. And Chanukah has a special chapter of Tehillim. It's Perek Lamed. It is the 30th chapter of Tehillim. Why do we read this one? Because it says, Mizmor, the Levites played music, Shir, and sang Chanukat Habayit, a song for the inauguration of the temple, LeDavid, by King David. So that's why we read this chapter, because of the opening line. But let's learn more about this chapter. It's amazing, because we actually say it every day now in our prayer book. It started off, as I just said, Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. a psalm that was sung for the inauguration of the first temple. Now remember, David lived before that, but he wrote these chapters in anticipation of them being sung and performed in the temple. When and why did David write this? Being the second king of Israel, he wrote this psalm to be sung during the consecration of the temple in the times of Solomon. Shlomo, Solomon, was King David's son. What is the genre? What's the feel? What do we understand? The tone of the chapter is, it is a psalm of individual thanksgiving, not communal thanksgiving. This psalm emphasizes gratitude for what God has done for the individual. And let's hear that show up in the words of the chapter. Now let's summarize the chapter. This psalm was composed by King David in honor of the dedication of the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. Though he himself would not be worthy of building God's house, the promise that the temple would be built by his son Solomon was sufficient vindication against the taunts and derision of his enemies. Oh, you're such a big shot. Why didn't you get to build a temple? So he's like, guys, put your mouth in check. Do you understand who you're talking to? This psalm consists of 13 verses, subdivided into 4 parts. Verse 1 serves as an introduction. Now, let's look at verses 2 through 4. And these are about King David expresses his thanks to God. Back up to the psalm of individual thanksgiving. So, the first thing we look at is Pasuk Bet. B. 2. Aromimcha Adonai. Arom, I am going to exalt you, God. Kidili Sani. For you have upheld me. So I'm going to show you gratitude in kind. Velo simachta oivai li, and you did not let my enemies be sameach, rejoicing over me. Next pasuk, Gimel. Adonai Elohai. Adonai, you're my God. We're referring to God by his name. And then they use the name of my God. So they would refer to God by his first name, which he had a few. Next, Shivati Elecha Vatir Pa'eni. I cried out to you, and you healed me. That relationship that King David had with God was unparalleled, and it endures forever and ever. This spiritual role model that King David was because of his unshakable faith. Adonai, it's the 4-letter name of God. We say my master, but it really was the name that you would say, you're not allowed to say God's name, but you'll say Yud K Vav K, or the word after we hear the witnesses, that word. Now, let's continue. He'elisa min she'ol nafshi. You have raised my soul from the lower world. What was Sheol? It was like the dungeon. It was like, you know where, Hell. And it says, Chiyetani miyardi vor. You kept me alive, lest I descend into the pit. So it's talking about the lower world. Like now we would call it hell. Or they would talk of purgatory and stuff like that. Let's look at verses 5 and 6. He calls upon the pious to give thanks to God as well, for God's anger passes quickly. Sometimes people get very angry and they stay angry. God can get really angry, however, he recomposes himself quickly. Zamarula Adonai Chasidav. Sing to God, his pious ones. So this is who David surrounded himself with. V'hodu lezecher kodsho. Give thanks to his holy name. Just his name had holiness. Just to speak his name, it made you feel a sense of purity and a sense of happiness and contentment. This, Pasuk Vav. Ki rega biyapo. For his anger lasts only a moment. Chayim birtzono. But there is a long life in his conciliation. Ba'erev yolin bechi. In the evening, one goes to sleep, boche, crying. V'laboker rina. But that overnight, let me sleep on it, I wake up and I'm literally crying for joy. So that is the flipping over the energies. Now let's continue. 7 through 10. King David describes his struggles. Let's hear what happens. Va'ani amarti bishalvi. I said in my shalva, in my serenity, Bal emot leolam. I would never be moved, never change the way I feel towards God. Adonai birtzoncha. God, it was your will alone. He'emadete leharari oz, that established my mountain as a stronghold. When you're high up, people can't get to you. Histarta panecha, you concealed your presence from me. Hayisi nivhol, I was terrified. Elecha Adonai ekra, to you God I am going to call. Ve'el Adonai et Chanan, and my master I beseeched. Chanan, chen, kindness. Yud 10. Ma betza bedomi beriditi el shochas. What gain is there on the shedding of my blood? These people want to kill me. Now what, God? You think any benefit is going to come if I'm dead? Hayodecha afar. In my going down to destruction, will the dust acknowledge you? There's zero gain. Hayagid amitecha, will it proclaim your truth? So those 3 verses is David is struggling. Like, why are these people trying to kill me? What gain are they going to have? It doesn't have a gain. If I'm dead, what good am I to the world? I'm here because I want to bring godliness into the world. Let's look in the last 3 verses. He offers his thanksgiving for deliverance from his hardship. Shema Adonai v'choneni. Hear me, God, and be gracious to me. Adonai hayeh ozer li. God, be help to me. Yud bet 12. Hafachta mispedi limacholi. You have turned my hesped, my mourning, into dancing. Pitachta saki. You have loosened my sackcloth. V'ta'azreni simcha. And supported me with my joy. Home run. Last verse. Yud Gimel 13. Lema'an yizamerecha chavod, in order that my soul might sing to you. V'lo yidom, and I will not be stilled. Adonai Elohai liolam odeka. Adonai, my God, forever I will thank you. David is talking to God, and he doesn't say, God, what is this? He's like, God, I'm coming through. And it's going to be great, because I know you're my shield, and you're going to protect me. Now, watch this. Interesting facts. The psalm is commonly referred to by its first 2 words, Mizmor Shir. While originally recited as part of the dedication ceremony of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, it was reintroduced as part of the daily prayer during the 17th century. So at the dedication of the temple, King Solomon was all of 16 years old. No, he started building the temple when he was 16, and it was built until he was 23. It took 7 years. Now, it also is interesting to know that it is recited as the song of the day on Hanukah, that you say it. And it is recited in addition to the regular daily psalms. In others, it replaces it. Then, we mentioned about Sheol, the lower or underworld, the abode for the dead. Finally,